Evil Dead 3 Army of Darkness is an American comedy horror film released in the year 1992. The plot of the film follows a zombie battling hero, Ash Williams, who accidentally gets transported to the medieval times where he is forced to combat an army of dead to return to the present. With his chainsaw and shotgun, Ash is sent on a dangerous mission to recover the Book of the Dead called the Necronomicon. The film starts with Ash Williams, a slave in the year 13,000 AD, being dragged to his death. He then recounts the story of his life of how he ended up being a slave. A flashback scene reveals that Ash had a normal life before and a girlfriend named Linda, together with whom he drove to a small cabin in the mountains one day. Seeing the cabin, he realized that an archaeologist must have come to see and study the place to translate the surroundings. In the cabin, he found Necronomicon Ex Mortis, the Book of the Dead. To his surprise, the book was bound in human flesh and inked in blood. The ancient Sumerian text contained bizarre burial rites, funerary incantations, and demon resurrection passages that are never meant for the world of the living. They awoke something dark in the woods and engulfed Linda with it. After taking Linda, it approached Ash and got into his hand. Seeing no other option, Ash lopped it out of his wrist by chopping away his hand. But that didn't stop it, and it came back once again, engulfing Ash and every other thing in its exposure. This darkness transported Ash to the Middle Ages. After falling from the sky into the mountains, Ash is astonished to see his new surroundings. Arthur's wise man encounters Ash and believes he is the one written of in the Necronomicon, he who is prophesied to fall from the heavens and deliver them from the terrors of the Deadites. However, the others believe that Ash is a spy for Duke Henry, with whom Arthur is at war. Arthur's men are enraged to discover him and capture him instantly after confiscating his chainsaw and shotgun. The scene returns to the start of the film when Ash is mercilessly dragged to his death. He is taken into Lord Arthur's castle. A beautiful girl named Sheila, the sister of one of Arthur's fallen knights, questions Lord Arthur about her brother. Arthur reveals that her brother fought valiantly and fell into Duke Henry's men last night, leaving her dejected. Meanwhile, Ash is viciously beaten by the barbarians, and also Sheila, as she thinks Ash is one of Henry's men. Seeing him, she vows to avenge her brother's death. Ash then meets the captured Henry, who reveals that he is the Duke of Shale, Lord of the Northlands, and leader of its people. Ash is not so pleased to meet him and expresses his disappointment, earning Henry's anger. Arthur appears and accuses Henry of waging war on him. This gives rise to a heated argument. In his rage, Arthur orders to throw a slave into a pit that's filled with bloodthirsty creatures. Moments after the slave is thrown, showers of blood start gushing out of the pit. Fearful of the outcome, another slave tries to escape, so Arthur impales him by shooting an arrow at his back. Horrified, Ash tries to assure Arthur that he has nothing to do with Henry and doesn't even know him, but to no avail. Sheila, who is enraged due to her brother's death, hurls a stone at Ash that ends up with him falling into the pit. Inside the pit, Ash is attacked by a Deadite who beats him viciously. Tired of the beating, Ash starts fighting the Deadite, which prompts the wise man to return Ash his chainsaw and shotgun. Using the chainsaw, Ash slaughters a Deadite and manages to make his way out of the pit, earning the crowd's fear. Infuriated with Arthur's actions, Ash punches him in the face, the first thing after coming out of the pit. He then orders to free Henry, and Arthur feels helpless to protest against it. When Arthur proposes a sword fight, Ash shoots a bullet at his sword, breaking it into two pieces. While warning everyone to not pick a fight with him, Ash kills a Deadite publicly and is veiled as a hero. Then onward, the barbarians start taking great care of him, and Arthur burns on the inside, witnessing this sight. Sheila apologizes to Ash for her behavior and tells him that she was misled. Ash refuses to accept her apology and focuses on getting back to his real life. He seeks help from the wise man, who suggests that only the Necronomicon has the power to send him back, as it has magical passages that can lead Ash back to his time. Moreover, he clarifies that only Ash the Promised One, can quest for it. Ash becomes furious and demands the wise man send him back to his time whatsoever. Out of nowhere, a deadite appears and haunts everyone present in the room with its shrieking voice and scary talk. Ash kills it by shooting multiple bullets at it. The wise man informs Ash that if the Necronomicon gets into the deadite's approach, the whole of mankind can be consumed by evil. Having no other choice, Ash decides to set on a quest to search for the Necronomicon. Before that, he gets an artificial metal wrist attached to his arm that crushes anything in its grip. At night, Sheila approaches Ash to confirm if he will actually lead her people against evil after finding the book. Ash rudely clarifies that the only reason he is looking for the book is to return back to his time. Sheila tries to be nice to him and hands him a blanket, wishing him good luck on the quest. Ash rejects it and belittles her, which enrages Sheila, and she ends up slapping him on the face. Ash turns on and holds Sheila, kissing her tightly. The following morning, he along with Wise Man set out on a journey to find the Necronomicon. The Wise Man guides him to the path that leads to the unholy cemetery where the Necronomicon awaits. In addition to that, the Wise Man specifically tells him to recite the words Klaatu Barada Nikto once before he retrieves the book. Before leaving for the cemetery, Ash makes a deal with the Wise Man that he will send him back when he returns with the book. As he sets on the path to find the book, an unseen force pursues him. Ash tries to elude it, but ends up falling into a ditch. Seeing no other option, he musters courage and runs away from the force into a windmill. The force tries to break into the windmill, but Ash blocks its way. Soon the unseen force subsides, and Ash finds a mirror inside the windmill. He intentionally crashes into the mirror and breaks it into pieces. Soon enough, small reflections of him in the mirror shards come to life and start making his life miserable. First, they pierce his butt with a sharp fork and then shoot a bullet at him, which they fortuitously miss. In the process of evading trouble, Ash ends up sticking his face into the burning fireplace. He then uses a scraper to scrape off his face and then decides to stop at one of his mini reflections. However, in the end, he ends up falling unconscious after stepping on a pin. Soon, he wakes up and finds himself tied to the ground by his little miniatures. He engulfs a miniature, hoping to get rid of it. But to his surprise, the miniature starts budding from his shoulder, giving life to a life-sized copy of him. Bewildered to see his ruse, Ash shoots him with the shotgun and then butchers his body with the chainsaw. He then buries the pieces of the body with its head, cursing him that he will never retrieve the Necronomicon and that he will die in the graveyard. Later, in the middle of the night, Ash finally traces the Necronomicon location but finds 3 books instead of 1. Confused, he randomly opens one book which engulfs him with strong power. With much difficulty, he manages to make his way out of the book. However, his face ends up getting stretched. After spinning around a couple of times, his face returns back to normal. Desperate to select the right book this time, he ponders over the 2 remaining books, thinking about which one he must select. Once again, he chooses the wrong book that reveals its teeth and ends up biting Ash several times. Finally, with only 1 book left, Ash realizes that it has to be the real one. He recalls the Wise Man's wordings that he instructed him to recite in order to remove the book safely. However, he realizes that he has forgotten the last wording of Klaatu Barada Nikto. Confused, he tries his best to recall the word and ends up murmuring and coughing at the end to assure himself and the unseen forces that he uttered the right words. As Ash grabs the book, a thunderstorm takes place and everyone in the castle starts panicking. The graves in the cemetery start exploding one by one and Ash makes his way out. His leg is pulled by the dead corpses from the graves. They turn out to be deadites who give him a pretty rough time. Ash somehow manages to flee them. He grabs the book and rushes to the horse to leave the cemetery. Desperate to go back to his present, Ash makes his way to the Wise Man so he can send him back with the help of the magical passages from the Necronomicon. Meanwhile, the large-sized copy of himself that he buried comes back from the dead. Ash reunites with the villagers who applaud his efforts for bringing back the Necronomicon. Upon meeting with the Wise Man, Ash desperately asks him to complete his end of the deal and send him back. The Wise Man asks him for the book and confirms from him whether or not he spoke the exact words he had asked him to recite while removing the book. Ash tells him that he didn't say every single tiny syllable, but basically recited them all. The wise man freaks out and informs him that he has jeopardized the lives of the entire village because reciting the incomplete phrase must have awakened the Army of Darkness. Ash refuses to take the blame and holds the wise man responsible for everything, as he's the one who's promised to get rid of the mess once he gets the book. The wise man clarifies that the book does not have the power to send him back, but it is now useless as the evil has a terrible hunger for the Necronomicon, and that it will definitely come sooner or later to get it. Ash fails to accept it and demands the wise man hold his end of the bargain and send him back. The dreaded Arthur arrives and claims that the wise man will keep his promise and send him to his present. Seeing Ash's selfishness, the crowd is disappointed by him and starts turning against him. Sheila pressures Ash to help the people from the upcoming evil, but to no avail. She reminds Ash of the promises he made to her and the sweet claims he made. Ash rejects her by saying that it was just pillow talk and nothing more. However, Sheila refuses to believe in it and tells him that she still has faith in him and that he will stay and save them from the Army of Darkness. Disappointed by Ash, Sheila distances herself from him, but just then a flying deadite abducts her, creating a panic among the crowd. Meanwhile, the Army of Darkness prepares to wage a war with the humans. Ash's ruse guides his army of deadites to shed the blood of each and every human and to put up a kind of battle that has never taken place in history. One after the other, all the skeletons from the cemetery are awakened and ready for combat. Ash's ruse grabs Sheila and tries to interact with her lecherously, leaving her disgusted. The humans find out that the army of deadites is approaching from the wilderness and will soon arrive. Arthur suggests running to the mountains to protect themselves from the perilous creatures. However, Ash advises against it and suggests fighting the army of the dead courageously. Arthur mocks him by saying that they will be outnumbered by the army of skeletons. So, Ash proposes to summon Duke Henry and his men to fight along with them. Seeing his determination, the people agree to fight in spite of fleeing away like cowards. After transforming Sheila into a deadite, the army of the dead makes their way to the castle in full swing. Until the deadites arrive, Ash uses the scientific knowledge from textbooks in his 1973 Oldsmobile Delta 88 to make preparations for the war and to protect the book. As the deadites approach the castle, they are firstly blown away by the torched arrows. Next, Ash leads the humans to use catapults to fire flaming balls toward the skeletons. However, the army of skeletons keeps on increasing, so Ash powers the 21st century vehicle and tramples the skeletons one by one. When the skeletons invade the castle, Henry arrives with his force, and after a long and tiring battle, the humans successfully gain victory over the deadites and their captain, protect the Necronomicon, and save Sheila. This prompts Henry and Arthur to make peace between them, and the entire crowd applauds for them. Soon enough, the wise man uses a passage from the Necronomicon and guides Ash to drink a potion after reciting the same phrase as earlier to return to his time. Before departing, Ash bids farewell to Sheila by sharing one last kiss with her. The scene cuts to Ash back in his present, where he's recounting the story of the castle to a fellow employee at the department store where he works. A female coworker appreciates Ash's story, but just then a surviving deadite appears out of nowhere because it turns out that Ash once again forgot the last word of the phrase while returning to the present. Ash combats the deadite with a rifle, and the film ends with him kissing the female coworker before saying, "Hail to the king, baby." This movie has a rating of 7.4 on IMDb. The budget of this movie was around $7 million, and at the box office, it earned $21.5 million. I hope you all liked this video. If yes, then make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps.